Awesome. So we're just live. Welcome everyone to the webinar today, a simple way to teach life skills. Sorry, I just did that webinar, so it's stuck in my brain. We have this one. I know the email went out on Monday or Tuesday. This one's going to be fun. This one is, you see a new face up there, John Engelhardt, who runs an 18 to 21 program near Philly. And we're trying every month now to incorporate our customers into these conversations, because what we've been hearing the past couple of years, well, frankly, for longer than that, but especially over the last couple of years, has been more implementation questions, more comments about, okay, how does this work in this situation? Or now we went virtual for 2 years. How is this working? Or how does it look now post-COVID, now that we're kind of getting back into the classroom? And so what we're trying to do is build that up with our customers, with our community of Conover folks that use it. So John has been using it for 9 years. We'll get into that at the near the end of the presentation. He's going to kind of be the capstone. He's going to be the anchor in the relay. But in the beginning here, we're going to go over a little bit of logistics for housekeeping items. I'll wait for some more folks to come alive because I see people coming in right away here. But we're going to go over some housekeeping stuff. I'm going to jump into a little bit of professional development, talking about video modeling and why that's important and why we do it, because that kind of helps frame the mindset of how we built the programs. Taylor is going to talk just real briefly about some of the new things we're doing inside of functional skills with subscriptions and such. And then, like I said, we'll pass the baton to John to talk about his Achieve program, his successes, what he's been experiencing with us. And then we'll open the floor up to, like usual, questions. And we'll have a little bit more room for questions here near the end, just because of this new format, this new, special guest here. We want to make sure that we, get those questions, because my gut says a lot of the questions are going to be geared to him. So we'll get that. So I am going to make sure my settings are accurate. Good. And then some people are still coming in, but what we'll do is, if you guys want to chat where you're coming from, go ahead and punch it in where you're coming from. City and state's good, just to get us started. And then while you're doing that, we'll do some housekeeping things. Okay. Promise, only one minute to do this, and then we'll jump right into the content. So number one, this will be recorded. I got a couple of emails right before this saying, hey, I have students. I wasn't able to make it. I'm eating lunch. I'm doing whatever. I have another conference. Is this going to be recorded? Yes, it's going to be recorded. You'll get an email tomorrow at the same time, noon Central, 1 Eastern, with the recording. The slide deck will be in the email. So as we talk through some of these things, if there's some nuggets you want to take, Portage, shout out Portage, Wisconsin. Awesome, Holly. There's nuggets you can take. You'll get that slide deck tomorrow. So you'll get that also in that email. And then lastly, there will be a page at the end for contact information that we'll put in the chat, and you'll be able to contact us afterwards. Okay, so that's that. And then anything throughout, Taylor is going to be there to make sure that I handle the chat. Okay, so let's get going. Enough of that. So what I'm going to do is jump into we got a lot of people here. This is awesome. Dover, New York, Jersey, Wisconsin. Awesome. 2 Wisconsinites. Let me share my slides. Awesome. Okay, so here you are. Simple way to teach life skills. Today's roadmap, we're going to talk about the COVID impact, which all of you know very well, I'm sure, but just kind of getting that frame of reference here, kind of getting that conversation started. Defining life skills, what they are, and then best practices, talking about video modeling especially. Tools to teach life skills simply, which obviously is for most of you here. Most of the people here are already customers. There are some newbies, and that's okay. That's awesome. We'll be reaching out to you. And then also, I know some customers reached out to us saying, hey, can I sign up for this? Do we have access to, the life skills section? And I responded, yes. I'll say that now, that you do have access to the life skills section if you're a Conover Aligned customer. But we'll talk about that. And then working in the class is John's section. He'll talk about his program and what he's done. And then, like I said, Q&A. Okay, so that's today's journey. So first things first, the COVID-19 impact. So what this did was this highlighted the need for hybrid solutions. COVID had obviously the virus itself, but it had a huge impact and shown some other spots that we needed to focus on and needed to improve. So the first thing it highlighted was, um, are we able to flip a switch and say, hey, you can work remote, you can go home and be out of the classroom and still be successful? And for the vast majority, we weren't set up that way, especially in the education world. Organizations too, right? It's not just education, but organizations too were structured as such to be physically present to be successful. And so that kind of shed some light on some ideas of like, okay, how do we make sure that something like this happens? And then the conversation of, even for those of us that have it, snow or weather, right? So like weather delays. Now we don't have to have delays or have school. We can just be remote and not have to worry about having school in June, July, right? For some. Um, and so this just highlighted that conversation and talk about how do we have the hybrid conversation to be virtual and or in person. There was also a lack of community connection. So not only did this have an impact on mental health for both students and staff, but it made it all but impossible to do any community training or on the job training, right? You think back at the very early stages, March, April, May 2020, um, we weren't able to go in person and do job training, on the job training, or apprenticeships or internships or community-based employment or training. And we're still getting back to being social in that real life. So many have been impacted by this pandemic in just a variety of ways, and that is a true gamut. We want to look how we can help individuals get back into the community and teach these life skills, these independent living skills. Okay. And more on that, like I said, a little bit later. So first things first, what are life skills? Well, the dictionary definition, if we go to like Merriam-Webster, right? They're behaviors used appropriately and responsibly in the management of personal affairs. A set of human skills acquired, excuse me, acquired via teaching or direct experience that are used to handle problems and questions commonly encountered in daily life. Right? But how do you teach these skills or give direct experience during a pandemic or when you can't be physically together? And so this has been, again, difficult to do. And in-person training was or is still limited. Community-based programming is starting to get back into the swing of things, but there is other factors as well. But life skills in a nutshell are either teaching or direct experience, skills that are used to handle problems and questions commonly encountered in daily life. Some of the things that we see or think about as life skills: social skills, that social interaction, like meeting somebody. How do you meet somebody? What does that look like? How do you overcome that anxiety of that? Telling time, using money, right? Like for telling time, getting to a bus stop at the right time. You got to make sure the bus isn't waiting for you. So telling time is critical. Getting to the job at the right time. Using money. Now all of a sudden you throw Bitcoin and other things into the picture, and it gets real crazy, real fast. But using money, communication, and that's ever expanding with not only apps on smart devices, but just still writing emails, etiquette that way. So communication, self-determination, setting goals. How determined are you to reach those goals? Do you believe in those goals? Hygiene, grooming, dress, getting around in the community. All of these are life skills, and these are just a few examples. I just put them on a screen to kind of walk through the mindset of what these life skills are. Learning these types of skills can propel students into the world and tackle any of their post-secondary goals. Okay. And so how do we do that? What are best practices to get there? One of those best practices, and what we use primarily if you're a customer of Conover Online, is video modeling. Right? And again, if you've used us, you know this. But why does video modeling work? Is this just a cool thing so we can justify having Chromebooks and iPads in students' hands? No. Right? But to make sense of video modeling, I want to take a look at Dr. Albert Bandura's work on observational learning. And this is kind of cool. Okay, this is again, abbreviated short snippet here of the first 15 to 18 minutes. I wanted to go over this, but this is really critical to see why video modeling can work, especially for individuals with disabilities. So Albert Bandura found that children acquire many skills simply by observing other people perform those skills. Okay, so he was a psychologist who contributed in many ways to the field of education. And one way was through observational learning. Okay, like it says on the screen. He found that children acquire many skills simply by observing other people perform these skills. So observational learning occurs when we observe the actions of another and note the consequences of that person's actions. Then the next step, deciding whether to imitate those actions or not. Okay, so I equate it kind of like, I have younger kids, so I equate it to like disciplining my oldest. I got to set the example for her, so then the youngers can see her and say, oh, do I want to do that same thing? You know, is this something in a lot of classroom management techniques the same way, right? We kind of set those examples and say, hey, these are the expectations. This is what we want to have happen in the classroom. This is acceptable or not, you know, and then they obviously can make the decision whether or not they're going to imitate that. And what's interesting is it was found that children as young as 21 days, so 3 weeks old, have been shown to imitate even facial expressions and mouth movements. So this work from Albert Bandura is crucial when we talk about observational learning and seeing that. So the thing that's super interesting though is he found that observers will imitate behaviors with or without the use of reinforcement, and they can learn to perform the behavior in new settings. This is great. This is great news, because if behaviors can be imitated and then performed in new settings with or without the use of reinforcement, well then great. Let's reinforce the good behaviors and reinforce the skills that can help succeed out in the real world. Let's incorporate these life skills, and let's do so by incorporating video modeling. So video modeling is the process of repeatedly observing, and that's where that backstory of observational learning, by Albert Bandura is so critical. By observing appropriate language and behavior in real life situations on a screen, and then using this new behavior in real life situations. Right? Video modeling is the ability to incorporate the video lesson in real time with real life opportunities to practice the targeted behavior. Further enhances that learning. It's powerful. This is where video modeling is so powerful. If we can leverage technology, learn, or through the power of video, we can maximize the impact each student of learning these crucial life skills. Right? We can have them observe their peers in various social situations on a screen, on video, right? And then they can see how to put on deodorant. They can see how to cross a street safely. They can see how to load a dishwasher, wash dishes by hand. They can see different nouns, verbs, community signs, and words, right? There's a lot of great reasons. Like, it's safe. Individuals can see things out in the community, but they do not have to physically put themselves in harm's way so as not to get sick with COVID. I know numbers are dropping. It's all good news in that regard, but we want to just make sure that that's top of mind, right? So we can use video modeling in any setting, whether it's in person, whether it's virtual, whether it's on your phone, walking through the community, right? It's really it's a safe way to do that. It works. We've seen how observational learning works, observing those behaviors and then using those behaviors in new situations. So let's observe those behaviors on a screen, right? Through video modeling. And then finally, it can be done in person or virtual. So having videos online, it doesn't have to be a hiccup between in person and virtual. That's the one thing we've heard a lot of times has been like, there's a hiccup. The consistency from the classroom to virtual or hybrid or this and that has been kind of lost. There is no consistency there. And so the learning gaps minimize if we have accessibility online for both teachers, staff, and then also the students working through that. Okay. And going back to what I mentioned in the very beginning, video modeling is a tool which individuals can learn a set of human skills acquired via teaching or direct experience. Okay, that definition of life skills. And so if you can see yourself doing it, you can do it. And here's what I mean. In fact, right before we jumped on, Taylor and John were talking about the Sixers and the big trade with Harden and what. So this is a perfect segue for basketball talk. Is what I mean by if you see yourself doing it, you can do it. This applies for everyone. So there's a study out of the University of Chicago of practicing free throws. And the goal was to improve free throws. And what they did was they had 3 groups in doing this study. First group practiced free throws for 1 hour a day. Pretty simple. Stood at the free throw line, did their little dribble and then shot free throws. The second group visualized making free throws. So they didn't physically practice. They just visualized. They did some mental rehearsal, right? They imagined, okay, how do I shoot free throws? And then the third group did nothing. And after a month, they found that group 1 improved 24%. So the group that physically practiced free throws improved 24%. The third group that did not do anything did not improve. Good correlation there. But then what's interesting is group 2. That group that visually, in their minds, practiced free throws improved 23%. And so the difference between group 1 and 2 is almost negligible. And yet the way in which they went about doing it is super interesting. And there's some nuances in the study that you can check out. Like I said, it's from University of Chicago. But the meat of it is right here, where the difference between trying something in your head and actually doing it and practicing that, the improvements were there. And so this just further shows, hey, this is why video modeling is important. This is why I can use this in the classroom. Okay. And so, especially when you talk about our functional skills system, that is the program that has the most videos in it. That's the program that is chocked full of over 5,500 now videos, 130 some odd, 130 plus actually. We just added a few more titles. And then these 3 levels to hit on the various level of student that you work with, which again, in about 10 minutes, John's going to talk about that with the levels of students that he has. But there's 3 levels inside of here. And so what I'm going to do is pass this along to Taylor. I want him to discuss a little bit. Taylor, I'm going to drop the slides and you can go ahead and share your screen and go with explaining a little bit about functional skills, the 3 levels, and then also some of the things we're working on with the new subscription, and then also a new setup wizard that makes assigning to your students that much easier. So I will be quiet and then I'm going to pass it off to Taylor.
Sounds good. Thanks, Art. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Taylor with Conover. I'm just going to show you a little demo today of how to actually use the life skills program you have us with Conover Online. So what I'm going to do is just share my screen here, and we will go ahead and just take you to our main website. All right, so if you're ever lost to get to our login page, just go to conovercompany.com, hover over the login screen, and then you can select the education version for most of you that are using that program or our education login. That will take you to our login screen, and then you use your information to sign in. So I'm going to use just a test, what we call an administrator account. So basically for those of you who are teachers, instructors, working directly, with the participants or students you're working with. And this will take you into our system here. So a lot of you probably recognize this screen right here. And yeah, ultimately, I'm just going to kind of walk you through how to create a student account, make the assignment for our functional skills program, and then how to view some of the data on that as well. And we'll just kind of dive into that. And I'll cover sort of the 3 different levels we offer too.
Taylor, can you do me a favor? Can you do me a favor and zoom in a little bit on the screen?
Yeah.
Just seeing from my lens. Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Perfect. Thanks for calling that out, Art. All right, so we'll go ahead and just go to create an account here. And then it'll ask for a user or your student's first and last name. So we'll just come up with a sample student here, put in their email address. If they happen to not have an email address, you can simply just make an email up. It really just functions as their user ID or login information. So this is an example of using that. Selecting a group is however you want to organize your students. Each of you might kind of navigate that differently. Tags are also different ways you can label students to pull reports and whatnot. That's optional. Otherwise, we'll just simply create a password, and then we'll create an account here. So we'll go ahead and do that. There are a couple settings here for functional skills specifically. Our advanced audio is pretty much complete sentences, everyday language, how you and I would talk, whereas our basic track is really more like core word association. So like, just more like core word concepts, not full sentences if you have lower functioning students. A couple other settings you can utilize here as well to, slow down the pace for some of the assessments if your user needs time to process things, as well as how many times you want them to attempt a certain question. So we won't go over all of that though, but we'll just go ahead and create that student. It'll take you to our assignment page. And this is where you'll see all the different tools you have access to with Conover Online. So you have a lot of different tools available to you, but today we're just going to focus on the functional skills. One thing I do want to point out is a lot of times people see these social emotional learning tools and they say, oh, this is great. I want to have my life skills students work on these skills. We basically offer two versions of most of these programs. So things like workplace readiness or personal responsibility. So these are all listed here for your higher functioning individuals. But if you do have, more of a population who's a little more lower functioning or higher need, we do offer those similar programs through functional skills. So again, for most of you, that's what you're going to want to focus on, is using this functional skills, select manage assignment. And then here, we're actually really excited. We just released a new user interface here to kind of help make things a little easier for you. Spells out sort of our two main options for how you can assign functional skills. If you want to just kind of go one at a time and pay as you go, it's 1 credit per unit. Keep in mind, we have over 100 units. So for that reason alone, a lot of people like our functional skills subscription. And that's definitely the most popular option. So with that, it's 10 credits for one student or user, and it gives you access to all 100 and plus units for 1 calendar year. You also get a video gallery where you can just sort of review the videos at any time for the student, or even create a favorite playlist. So again, we'll use that in this example. So that's typically the best use of your credits. So we'll go ahead and purchase access to that subscription using the credits we have. It's just going to spell out those conditions I talked about. 1 year access, 10 credits for a user. The nice thing about our subscriptions is they do not auto renew. So that way it helps you utilize your credits most effectively. And if you do decide to, continue the student using it for a second year or a third year, you can always just renew it as needed. Once we select purchase subscription, then it's going to take you to the place to make assignments. So the next step is, now they have access to the system, but since there's over 100 units, we want you to choose, okay, well, what specific programs do you want your user to focus on? So there's a couple of different options here. There's the levels kind of Art alluded to earlier. There's basically 3 different levels within functional skills. So the first is a signs and words series.
Hey,
and
Taylor.
that really just, yep.
Taylor, real quick, let me jump in just because, and I know you probably get to this. Sorry, I tend to.
Yeah, no, go for it.
But one of the caveats to what we're doing now is we did change this to a subscription model using credits. But there's going to be now a feature where after you assign the subscription, there's going to be a wizard that walks you through making the assignments immediately. Because one of the things we heard right after we released the subscription was, all right, I assign functional skills to my student, but when the student logs in, there's nothing there. And so we heard that a few times. So we said, all right, we got to fix this. And so we tend to, listen to our customers. If more people are having the same issue, we have to figure that out and rectify it. So what it's going to be is, after you assign the subscription, there's going to be a screen right before this one that Taylor's on. And it'll actually ask you, as the program administrator, is going to say, do you want to assign all of these units, all of the videos to your students? Just click this one little button. Nope, too many? Okay. Do you want to assign everything manually? You can do that. Or do you want to go through a wizard to help you? We're going to ask you a few questions to help you make assignments to your students. So there's going to be the 3 options immediately. And that'll alleviate a lot of the issues of making, assignments, or if you're not sure of what to assign. And so anyway, I just wanted to have that call out before Taylor jumps into the different levels, and then all of the videos and some examples there.
Yeah, thanks, Art, for calling that out. This is sort of how it currently works, but in the near future, it will be a little more. And yeah, we always love customer feedback. So for those of you who ever have any ideas, let us know. But in the near future, it'll be much more seamless in terms of making sure those assignments get made. So what you can do now is if you do want to assign manually, you can just filter by level. So let's say, you have a student who would really just be appropriate for our level 1, which is our signs and words series. Really just shows them what are different signs and words in the community, at the grocery store, in the classroom, at the workplace, and then how do you respond or react to them. That's sort of our most basic level. Our level 2 is our how-to series. This is breaking down somewhat more complicated tasks, such as like getting a haircut into steps and how to break those into those individual steps and put those steps in the correct order. And then level 3 is sort of our most advanced within the functional skills, and that's our learning activity series. And that's incorporating more interactive lessons based on that video modeling Art talked about, especially when it comes to like social skills and social emotional learning. So maybe showing examples of, a good attitude versus a bad attitude and things of that nature. So you can sort by those if that helps you kind of figure out what to use. Otherwise, like Art said, you could go through and you could say, okay, I want to just assign, these handful of life schools for a student, and then go ahead and assign those particular skills. That's one way you can do it. Picking out what you think is best for the students. Otherwise, the other thing we'll show you is kind of doing an assessment to help you with that. So if you select this help me with assignment button, it will take you to a little survey here that you as the teacher, or even if you want to print it out as a PDF and send it to the student's parent or the teacher that worked with them last year, they can fill that out and then you can input it. But basically, it's going to give them a scale of 1 to 7, how you can rate a student's ability level. And then if it's a 3 or lower, they'll automatically be assigned certain skills. So instead of sorting through, 100 units and saying yes or no to each one, this speeds that up a little bit. For instance, for Conover's health skills, we offer a first aid and pharmacy signs and words program, 2 different programs there. If I think, our student Andrew here is pretty good at those units and I give him a 6, he will not be assigned those 2 skill areas. Whereas for his life skills, if I think, he kind of could use some improvement in cleaning, the home hygiene, personal hygiene and things like that, I rate it 2, it's going to assign all those programs. So you can go through accordingly and decide what to assign or what not to assign. For time's sake, I'm just going to very quickly jump through all these different areas. And what you'll see at the end of the program is just a summary of, okay, how did I range the abilities students and then students' abilities. And then once we go to the last screen here, it's going to confirm, okay, based off your results, do you want to assign these recommended programs to the student? Yes or no. You can confirm, or you can go back and do it manually, and then ultimately make that assignment. So now the students all accessed. Or do you want me to show them how it looks from the user side real briefly, or do we want to?
I actually two things. One is, so help me or help them understand again, who takes that learner assessment?
Yes, the learner assessment would be either like the instructor, the teacher, someone who knows the student well, ideally, or if you would prefer, you could have that email the parent that PDF document, and they could fill that out, return it to you, and then you could go through and input their assessment of the student as well.
Okay, so once that's filled out, automatically then assignments can be made based off of how that was filled out by the teacher or parent.
Exactly. So sort of using a little bit of a pre-assessment in a sense to determine what of the 100 and plus units you want to have them work on or not work on, because each of your students is going to have individual needs.
Awesome. I don't think for this purpose of this, we have to jump into the user side. I did have a question though. Let's do this on the fly. Someone talked about, I need help reading the reports. So can you just touch a little bit on the reports? And then I think that'd be a perfect segue into passing along to John to talk about, his implementation and what he's done with using some of our tools.
Great. Yeah. Sort of the last piece then, like Art said, we'll go to view a report. So we'll use a sample student we have that has some data already. So if we use Maria here and just go to view accounts, either find or type in their name, select name of the student, it'll show any of their active assignments within Conover Online. So, you probably won't have them using all the programs, but you would find functional skills. And then once you select that, it'll show what units they're working on or which ones they've completed. So if we wanted to see how Maria was doing with the responding to the social skills unit, we would click view the unit report. And then this will pull up a report that you can either print for a paper copy or download for an electronic copy. And it will give you information like when they started it, how much time on task they spent, which I know can often be helpful for like IEPs and things of that sort. Some of the settings that were chosen. And then there's basically 3 small assessments they take during that program. So IR stands for instructional review, which is one of those little assessments. And then it's going to show you how many times it took them to get the attempt correct. So for the first assessment, she got it right on the first try most of the times. For the second assessment, it took her 2 tries to get this. Here it was 3 tries. This example, she didn't get it right any 3 times. So it captures that data for you to kind of see how your student's performing, and even gives a percentage here as well. So that's what can be captured on the back end.
And just real quick, just to clarify, as you have the screen up, so IR1, IR2, and IR3 it stands for instructional review. So this comes after they go through the curriculum piece. So after they go through, in this example, after they went through stop and look at the speaker, after they went through show that you are listening, the next thing is going to ask them audio and visual discrimination. So it's going to say, okay, is this stop and look at the speaker? And then we're going to show, for visual, we're going to show some scenarios and ask them, is this yes or no? And so visually, we want them to comprehend and see, is this appropriate? Is this real? Is this what this is? And then the other instructional review is going to be audio discrimination. So we're going to play a sign or word or a video, and then we're going to say, when you hear, in this example, stop and look at the speaker, select the mouse, and then that way you can track how many attempts it took. And so back at the beginning, Taylor had mentioned that there are some features that you can tweak. This is one of those features, is the amount of attempts. So right now it's set to 3, as you can see from those grayed out dots and then the green checks or the X's, but you can change it anywhere from 1. Like if you want to give them 1 shot, you can change it to 1 all the way up to 10. And so if you want to give them 10 attempts, you can. And so that's what's really nice about this is depending on the student, depending on the individual you're working with, you can change the attempt limit. And that's just one feature beyond the other features of like closed captioning, the ability for all of the text to be read aloud with text to speech. But it's really nice because, again, you can differentiate and individualize that instruction for every student you're working with. And then in the meantime, while you're individualizing it, the data, as Taylor's showing, is there. So whether you do 2 attempts, 3 attempts, 10 attempts, that'll be there. Whether they took 16 minutes and 25 seconds or they took 16 hours and 25 minutes, that data is going to be there. So it's really great to have this captured in real time. So as your students are working in person or remote, that ability is there for you to print this off, look at this like you're looking at here with Taylor, that screen and that data.
Great, thanks. I will hand it back over to you.
Well, I should have just done that in the beginning then, right? Like, yeah, my bad. Perfect. So how do I incorporate all of this stuff? The title of this, I signed up for this. This is what you're thinking, right? I signed up for this webinar. I saw a special guest, John Englehart. I signed up for this webinar. How do I incorporate all of this stuff? You said it's a simple way to teach life skills. You talked about observational learning, video modeling. You showed me all these little trinkets on, it's anything but simple, And so the hope is, though, that, all joking aside, the hope is that, though, you're able to see how much value this could be if you really dig into the different nuances of Conover Online. The support system is there to make sure that you know what you're doing and you can implement these tools with fidelity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass this along to John. He's going to talk about that. He's going to talk about his program. He's going to talk about how he's been using this for, like I said, almost a decade, with his students, and share a little bit of that. So without further ado, John, I'll do the slide deck for you, and then I'll let you go here.
Yeah, thanks, Art. Welcome. I remember sitting through several of these, but my first one about 9 years ago, and it's crazy we've been at it this long. But I started a program. I'm from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, in a school district called Council Rock. We started the Achieve program for young adults that are 18 to 21 are students that aren't going to college. These are students that range from students in life skills, intensive learning support, autistic support, and some learning support students. And our program gets them out into the real world and uses their natural environment as the teaching arena. So we connect with local businesses to get our students out into volunteer opportunities for them to learn job skills, as well as use their community travel training, teaching them those life skills that they're going to need for when they, enter that next phase of their life, and try to get them to be as independent as they possibly can. So 9 years ago, we started this program, and if there's other educators that are on this call, we have an intermediate unit, which up until about 10 years ago, managed all of our county's students with special needs. And if you love your job like I do, I only live 3.5 minutes away from my job, but if I had to walk, which we all know that transportation is our biggest obstacle with students with special needs, I wouldn't be able to get here. So my district decided it was time for us to spend the money to build a program and to educate our students in their natural environment and their community, where they will spend 90 to 95% of their time throughout their life. So that's my program. I've grown to really like art, but I wouldn't be here because of my relationship with art with Conover. They're the best. I've looked at Stanfield, James Stanfield. We have a little bit of money in my school district to be able to look at other transition curriculum. And what I found early on 9 years ago is there's nothing that I found that can compare to what Conover offers my program. In my program, my students are out to work right now. This is their office where they do a lot of their independent work. We just moved into a new building, which is really nice. But they're coming and going from work sites, travel training, working on independent living skills. And what Conover offers my students is an individualized program to focus on the important skills which will help them become more independent, more employable, and more productive members of their community. The programs that my program uses the most are workplace readiness. And why this is an awesome supplemental material for my program is students will be out to work and they'll come back at various times, and I can assign different programs on Conover for them to work on so they can work at their own pace. And what I like about Conover is it works for all of my learners. So if you want to slow it down and you want it to be read to them, you can have it read to them, and they can work at their own pace. I can't stress that enough. The other thing is data. As an educator, we hear data for the IEP, data for the progress monitoring, data. How do we measure a student's progress? And what's awesome about Conover is it does it all for you. If you're not very organized like myself, Conover handles it for you, so you can pull reports. I've gotten really good at pulling valuable data from the reports, probably because it's pretty easy. But what I like about Conover is they take the map, the overall assessment, and then it targets those areas that student needs to work on. And what I do with that data is those are the areas that not only are we working on and remediating on through Conover, but also when they're out in the community, we're working on those specific skills. For example, I just had a student take the job readiness map, and the interpersonal social skills and teamwork were two skills that student scored. They were their two lower scores. So those are two areas that I now know to target when they're on the job site, when they're working with their job coaches, and when they're working with their peers. Those are two areas to target, and then I can measure the progress because they follow up with activities where they're going to give you that data to see where that student grows. And again, for the past 9 years, and I like art a lot, and art is fantastic at getting back to me and communicating and really taking care of my program. But there's nothing out there that does what Conover is capable of doing. And I can't speak any higher about Conover because I know what it's done for my program. I just looked to today that in 9 years, I think I've had 90 students go through. I have 90 accounts, And the last thing I'll say is, it's tough to get students to do something that they don't want to do. My students enjoy Conover. It's a relaxing activity where they get to work at their own pace. They don't need to have a teaching assistant or a job coach standing over them. Obviously, you can do that if you want, but it gives them an opportunity to work independently. And I can measure that data because at the end of their activity, it's going to tell me exactly where they're at and how they scored. So,
John, I have a question on that. As you said that, this just came to me because one of the pushbacks I've heard from teachers and staff and sometimes parents has been, I don't know though. My student A, can't work independently though. So how do you get your students, or how do you become as the instructor or teaching these kids comfortable with them working independently? Like, what are some of the things you do?
So we have a couple different programs where I can be in another room and have access to their computer to see what they're doing. So there is a level of independence, but also I'm able to see exactly what they're doing. But what I found is my students enjoy it, and they don't want to lose this opportunity to work on Conover. It's to work on their computer and to have the visual, right? My students are not they're different types of learners. Some of them are auditory learners. Some of them are visual learners. Some are, kinesthetic, where they got to actually do something. Conover meets their needs by, if they have the ability to read, they can read the module. If they need it read to them, it'll be read to them. And then they have pictures and real life scenarios in the application. And if you have trial different transition activities or videos, in my experience, they're very outdated, and it's like watching a C-level movie. Conover is engaging, and it's something that keeps my students' attention. So what I would say that they can't or they struggle to do it independently, what I would do is I would never, if a student needed the supports, I would provide those necessary supports. But what I found is once a student is on Conover and is going through the activities, because we use it for the bullying prevention, the anxiety management, anger management, they see how it applies to their real life. I think that's one of the major parts too, is that everything that we're doing on Conover, we can connect to what they're doing in their day-to-day when they're outside of the classroom on a job site, or if they're budgeting in the community for wants versus needs in a grocery store or at Target or Walmart. They can see how what they're learning on Conover is going to apply into what they're doing outside of the classroom. So that's a huge piece, is that everything that Conover does is very connected to what we do on a day-to-day basis. The soft skills that we focus on are embedded in Conover. And one of the things that I really like, and that I don't see many other transition companies doing, is there's a lot of materials on job readiness, but the job seeking, that interview, the job search, the resumes, the applications, that ties perfectly into what I'm trying to do when I create work portfolios for my students. But also the big part that I find is left out is job keeping. Once you get the job, okay, that's a huge accomplishment. But what are the necessary steps to keep that job? Once you got it, that's great. But how do we take advantage of that opportunity and make sure that you're going to stay in that job and you're going to thrive? And I really like that part that you guys have with the job keeping. I think it answers every step of the process that we go through on a day-to-day basis, and it supports my program's focus of being a work-based learning program that's going to increase independence, as well as become a functioning member of your community, and everything that you guys do in Conover. And I love how you guys, where you were 9 years ago with your program, is very different where it is now, and it's continuously updating, and there's different activities, and that gets added into what's already out there. So I love that you guys are kind of continuously evolving.
One thing I stole was this. I by the way, guys and gals that are here in attendance, I emailed John last night and said, okay, hey, by the way, I did throw one wrinkle in. I stole this from your email because this is John's quote in his email. And I said, all right, I'm going to pull this slide up, and I want you to just talk about, well, number one, this is like his mentality. This is John's mentality right here. But number two, some of the outcomes, some of the things that he's seen, because in relation to what John just said, that eventually they'll age out of services, right? So it's like eventually they'll either graduate, or if they're an 1821 program, they're going to age out. And so the idea is that they're ready when they're going to age out to be independent and working in a community, or have some sort of other post-secondary goal in a community and be successful in doing so. And so I like I said, I stole this, and I wanted to just have you share some of the positive outcomes you've seen that obviously cannot tie directly into Conover is the only sole reason that this student was successful. Now we can't say that, but in contributing to some of the successes that your students have had, if you can just share, even not with names,
Sure.
but just share some examples
Yeah. Now, if there's other educators in this webinar, you understand that the students that we have, the young adults with special need from 18 to 21, this is the best time of their life. This is when the resources are available. I'm in a building in my school district. I'm in a school district that does pretty well, and we have about 4 teachers, and I have 15 job coaches, and we have roughly 33 students. And we just moved into a beautiful new building. And then when my students leave at 21, and because of Act 66, a lot of my students from last year that were supposed to phase out, graduate, had the opportunity to stay another year. When they leave us, the land of entitlement ends, and now they go into adult services. And you get to see that the adult services world has nowhere near the money and the funding that it does that we have right now from when they're 18 to 21. So I put a lot of pressure on myself and my staff to get these students as ready as they possibly can, because they're not going to be in the same situation that your neurotypical 18-year-old's going to have, that's leaving high school, and then there's the opportunity to a trade school, to college. And even if you don't have your act together like I didn't when I was 18, that you have the opportunity to sort of figure things out. Our students don't have that. This is the prime time of their life, and we need to maximize the time that they are here with us, because I have the resources and the staffing to do everything. Like, this is the best time of their life. So where Conover helps us out is I can have students where if I have a behavior going on, okay, what you guys jump on? I want you to do Conover. In a few minutes, you'll see there might be students that walk by, they come in. I want to maximize every second of the day that they're in my program. My students come in at 8 o'clock and they leave at 2 o'clock. It's a little shorter day than I would like, but every second of that day, I want my students working on something that's going to make them a better person, and a person that's going to contribute more to their community, because I do not, the resources are gone once they leave us. So Conover is a huge piece of our program. And I like art a lot, but I look often to see what else I can do, because I love what I do. And these kids are my kids when they step foot in this program. Nothing is out there that can do what Conover does for my program. And there's a reason why we continue to come back to Conover year in and year out, is because it is the perfect supplemental material that we need for our program to maximize my students' time when they're in the program. I have students that leave that are working in hospitals, running food to the various units. I have students that work in food service. We have some students that are working at a sporting goods company. We have students that are working across the street at the library. We want to do everything we can to try to get our students one foot out the door and connect them to some sort of opportunity, whether that be paid or volunteer, that's going to keep these young adults as functioning members of their community. Because again, those of you that are in this field understand that once they leave us and entitlement ends and eligibility becomes what the next step is, it's very difficult. I lose a lot of sleep at night, but I can go to sleep knowing that Conover provides us with the best supplemental materials that we have available to us. And, very appreciative of what these guys do. And we're going to continue to use them because they're what we need to make our program the best it can be.
That's awesome. Thanks for that, John. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Awesome. So we'll like I mentioned, my gut tells me you guys are going to have more, implementation questions or comments or thoughts from what John was saying. But obviously, Taylor and myself are here too to answer any questions that you guys had. There was one or two in the chat that I already answered already, but we can go ahead and jump right into that if you want to ask away. Yeah, it could be anything from like product. There was a question on reports, which we handled live. But it could be anything about product. Like I know John had mentioned workplace readiness, and maybe I'll go into that. I'll share my screen while we accrue some of the questions here in the chat. Give me a second. Yeah, let's do this. I'll share my screen. Let me dump these slides so I can share my screen. So what's interesting about workplace readiness is there are the two different levels. So if you have a student who needs a lower level or a higher level of workplace readiness, you can do that. Workplace readiness right here, as you see it, top and center, full screen. But then there's also a workplace readiness within functional skills. So as you say, you know what, I want to have my students access that version of workplace readiness, you're able to do that. And so that's going to be underneath the social emotional learning section. So you're going to be able to see, like John mentioned, job readiness, job seeking, and then the often forgotten part of like, hey, you got to keep it. So let's get going with that. Water cooler talk, how to handle criticism, respond to feedback, rejection, things like that. Getting off on the right foot. That's going to be in there too. So yeah, there's two levels in here too, depending on the student. So give me a second. I saw one question. One was, how many functional skills units do you recommend assigning right away? Good question, man. That's a good question. Honestly, it depends, and maybe John can tackle this too if you want, just to kind of explain how you kind of assign things. But it's more on a case-by-case basis with, and he actually might have students coming in, so I won't put him on the spot.
No, how I do it, we come up with depending on how many students we have in the program, a certain dollar amount that, which would, how many credit bundles, like for example, if it's like, I think we have 10 credits per student. And we always start at workplace readiness. I think the best bang for your buck, the workplace readiness. And then I like to look at their map and see what those scores are.
Yeah.
And what I think is awesome is that it gets assigned. They'll get assigned what their lower scores are. I like personally to have my students go through all of them, even if they're strong in some of those areas, just because it's so applicable, if that's the right word, to tie into what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. So not only are we giving feedback and constructive criticism on those skills at the work site, but also then when they come back and they're working on Conover, now we're hitting at a completely different, in a less stressful environment where they're learning from the situation rather than have themselves directly in that situation. We find, and I don't know how to provide data on this, but since we're processing these skills on the job site, but as well as through Conover, we're hitting them at, in two different environments on the same skills. And I think awesome. the ability to transfer these skills from one site to another is Conover. There's no doubt that there's a positive correlation. I just don't know how to quantify that.
Yeah, no, and that kind of goes back to my comments about observational learning. When they see it, and then all of a sudden they're in a new environment, and then they can apply that behavior, that video they just watched. So that's awesome. Oh, that's very cool. There's another question. Taylor just responded, but does Conover give potential customers 2-week demo subscriptions? Yeah, we absolutely can work through some trials and stuff. And Karen, I'll reach out to you specifically. But if there's anybody else, you absolutely can reach out to us too. But you'll get an email tomorrow with a whole bunch of resources. Just reply to that email, and then I'll also hound you. So,
Art, can I try something?
yeah, let's do it.
Jimmy.
Yeah,
This is a seminar for Conover. You know what Conover is?
I do.
What do you think about Conover?
Conover is a amazing website where we don't just learn about important skills. We learn about life.
What do you like about Conover?
I like Conover because I get to learn so many important lessons and skills that I'm going to need later in life.
Okay.
That is awesome. By the way, we didn't plan that, so that's really cool. That's awesome.
And he just walked in the room, and he's just coming back to me, so he hasn't worked on Conover in about a month and a half. But it's what I say to my staff is, it doesn't matter how good you are at something. If you don't like to do it, you're probably not going to be pretty good at it. Right. And I think I can speak from my own experience. My students enjoy Conover. Now, maybe that's because I'm not good enough at creating other lessons that are but
but you're better at other things. You give them a hard time. I know it. I can tell. This is
I'm hard on my kids. Very hard. But they, and I think if you tried Conover and if you're a similar program to what we do, I don't see how it's not a perfect combination to teach these skills, because I think everything that you guys have on your website with personal responsibility, workplace readiness, is everything that ties into what we're doing. And my students like it. If I give them a choice, Conover or you're doing, we have a checkbook register, they'll choose it, and they know that there's data behind it. So it's not like they're going to work on something and I don't know how well they're doing. There's data, so they can't. It's not like they can just sit there, and it tells you how much time they're working on an activity. So if they're spending 3.5 hours working on something, which has never happened, but I would know because that activity is not supposed to take that long. So there's a lot of checks and balances where it gives educators an easy, not easy, but I have students coming in and out at different times. So to start a lesson and stop and to reteach and to try to tie in, I've tried every which way. It's really difficult to do. So if they know when they're getting back, they're going to Conover and they're working on workplace readiness. And that young man that just walked in, he's very good at this type of learning. So he might be way ahead of somebody else that's, still at job readiness. He might be at job seeking. And then I'm pushing my learners that are very good at that and maybe are a little bit more advanced, and then also providing the necessary supports for my students that need more time because they can work at their own pace and they're not having to have to keep up or have to get retaught anything because they get to work at their own pace.
So what I'm hearing you say, because I hear you 100%. So I'm just kind of paraphrasing because I agree is like, to keep track of all that stuff without a system behind you is so much work as a teacher. You're trying to balance everything and trying to. So if you could just say, hey, Jimmy, you're going to do this. Susie, you're going to do that. Johnny, you're going to do this. They can work at their own pace. And then you as the instructor and as the guide can be behind there to kind of facilitate where you need to rather than trying to put out fires. Is that?
Absolutely. And what we do is we're everything's a teachable moment for us. So we turn every situation into a teachable moment, and we're a family. So there's no shaming. It's, hey, if there's a situation that happens to somebody, we're going to walk with you hand in hand into helping you build that area. We moved into a new building, so it's not here. A lot of times we'll have our Conover scores posted in their office.
Nice.
So then all of my staff, we all know exactly what areas that student is focusing on and targeting, and it gives us, it's an easy way to go, okay, when I'm on a job site with the job coach, I can say, here's the 2 areas that I want you to work on: communication, teamwork, focus on task, initiative, those type of things. So that gives us an area to target, to build on. And we keep them posted. So it's public and we're here to support each other. So the other students know what other students are working on.
That's awesome.
We're all here to help each other.
It looks like Taylor was in there answering a few questions in there about general classrooms, high schools. And then there was a question Amy asked about, is there a way to incorporate videos into other programs that the student may be using as a digital delay schedule? I'm not quite sure on that question, but what I'm thinking is in our system, every student has their own login. And so what I would do is if there's certain delays with scheduling that, unless you're talking about delay between the audio and visual discrimination, and if that's your question, yes, you can set the delay at greater lengths if your students need that delay at greater lengths. There's a feature inside of the functional skills system to do that. You could just set the seconds. It's anywhere from, I believe, 1 to 10, but don't quote me. I forget the exact. But yeah, you can set the delay for that. Great. And any other questions? I know we said an hour. It's been an hour and 1 minute, so I want to be cognizant of your time. You all have places to go, people to see. Any other final thoughts or questions for myself, for John, for Taylor, for Conover as a whole? More than willing to answer. Otherwise, you guys can get on with your days. I'll hold out for about 15 or so seconds here. And it looks like some people are dropping off, which tells me they're going on with their days. Cool. Well, everyone, thank you so much. If you're watching the recording of this, thank you so much for watching the recording of this. That means a lot as well. That's still time, so we appreciate it. John, a special thanks to you. Obviously, you took an hour out of your day to sit with us. So,
this is good stuff. I hope everyone, people see the value, in what it's done for my program. And I don't know if somebody has a question on how I use it, you can reach out to me. Obviously, you got my email, phone number, or if you pass it along, I can explain how I incorporate Conover. If there's other programs that are similar and people want to share ideas, I'm all about it. So
absolutely. No, I will. Yeah. If anyone reaches out, I can absolutely pass that. So that's awesome. Cool.
All right. Thanks, man.
Hey, we will finish this up. John, I'm going to send you a Zoom link after this to debrief, if you don't mind. That way we can connect for 5 minutes. Other than that, you all have a great finish to your week. And thanks so much for being a Conover customer. Thanks, everyone.